Skylanders is a video game series that many people hold dear in their hearts, whether that be through nostalgia or by still playing the games today. In the community, there seems to be a lot of fan-favorite Skylanders, as well as many a Skylander that people have mixed opinions on. Lots of people can't seem to agree on whether some Skylanders, especially from the first two games, are good or bad. Some people say Wrecking Ball is bad. They're wrong. Some people say Drobot is the strongest Skylander. They're also wrong. My point is that all the Skylanders from the first two games are remembered by the fanbase and are mostly all equally talked about, whether it be positively or negatively. That is, except for one. One of the Forgotten Eight, the spin-to-win maniac, the guy that was robbed of being the Dragon of the Air element by some, weird-looking dog? The spikiest dragon turtle you'll ever see, Warnado! Now, most of the Forgotten Eight are still widely talked about and adored. Webshell's the elusive SSA figure many people, me included, wish they had. Camo got a Series 2 repose in Swap Force, and was overall given the most love of any of the 8 by the developers and the fanbase. Sunburn is the second best Skylander in all of Giants, once again robbed by that weird-looking dog, and infamous for being forgotten by the devs, which ironically makes him less forgotten by the fans. Ghost Roaster and Dinorang being fan favorites for their overall charm and fun gameplay, and hell, even Voodoo gets some praise now and then. That leaves Warnado. Sure, he got a Lightcore repose in Swap Force, but just because Vicarious Visions remembered he existed, sure as hell doesn't mean the fanbase does. He's never talked about. In the fanbase's eyes, he's not bad enough to be trashed on, but he's not good enough to be worshipped by all the A-spamming Timmies out there who neglect the secondary attack button. He's just perceived as mid. Washed. C-tier. But hey, that's just what most of the vastly uneducated fanbase believes. That's why I'm here, and unlike most of the community, I'm not held back by employment. So, my hyperfixating ass is here to make this video showing you how Warnado is actually great, and hopefully get more people talking about him. Let's get into it. Warnado debuted as one of the original 32 Skylanders from Spyro's Adventure, with him releasing in Wave. Yeah, no one cares about this. Let's just skip to the interesting part. Warnado's primary attack has him withdraw into his shell and spin forwards, dealing low damage and being somewhat spammable. Due to the fact that this attack jets you forward when used, it's a very reliable and quick dash that makes Warnado one of the faster Skylanders in the roster, despite his low speed stat. One weird quirk about this move is that if you hold down the A button, Warnado will stay stationary, curled into his shell. As a kid, I thought it gave him extra armor, but I'm not quite sure if it does serve any purpose, or even if it's intentional. Warnado's secondary attack causes him to spin and generate a small tornado that is launched forwards a small distance, before stopping completely, though later upgrades allow you to hold down the secondary button to send the tornado farther. These tornadoes can linger for a couple seconds after being created, but only one can exist at a time. Enemies that come into contact with the tornado are swept up by it, and start to spin up and out of the tornado, stunning them while they're in the tornado and dealing mediocre damage once they're spat out. Heavy enemies and arcane jousters, for some reason, are completely unaffected by the properties of these tornadoes. Instead, they take damage immediately when coming into contact with them. This move is Warnado's main source of sustainable damage, as not counting his top path, his only damaging move besides his primary attack, which, as I've said before, isn't very powerful. Spamming tornadoes to trap enemies in a stunlock cycle is very effective, and with later upgrades, tornadoes can pick up multiple enemies at once, making the attack very effective at dealing with hordes of enemies. For his tertiary attack, surprise surprise, like half the SSA roster, he was given a useless flight mode. Although I will give this move the benefit of the doubt, as Warnado is a Skylander with a slower speed stat, he benefits from the increased speed more. Hell, the flight's even slightly faster than mashing his primary attack. Now, most Skylanders with a flight move can still use their primary and sometimes secondary attacks whilst flying. He can use his secondary attack while flying, but due to a bug in the game, using the secondary attack mid-flight makes you even slower than if you were walking normally. This one bug prevents flight from being an actually useful move in combat, as your only offensive attack turns you into a punching bag for these sadistic, sword-wielding, quicksilver-chugging Skyland's equivalent of clankers. Sorry, it's just, I have some unsolved trauma. Warnado's upgrade paths are Eye of the Storm, which focuses on his flight and primary attack, and Windmaster, which focuses on his tornadoes. We'll be starting with Eye of the Storm. Eye of the Storm's first upgrade improves Warnado's primary attack by slightly increasing its damage and causing the attack to blast you forward incredibly quickly, turning an already great mobility option even more effective at gaining distance from enemies. The second upgrade makes Warnado conjure miniature shells when he enters his flight mode. Pressing the primary button will cause one of the shells to fly out and hit a nearby enemy, dealing low damage with a decently high attack speed. This move gives Warnado some much needed range as well as the ability to more easily break through armored enemies much more safely. However, it's worth noting that the direction that the shells are launched in is very finicky, as it will target the closest enemy or destructible object to Warnado. So sometimes it's hard to actually get the attack to target the enemy you want it to. Third upgrade allows Warnado to slam down during flight mode by holding down the primary button. The slam locks Warnado in place for a few seconds, deals decent damage, and causes all mini shells on Warnado to fly off and hit enemies. This move isn't very useful on higher difficulties, as the amount of end lag the move has makes Warnado incredibly vulnerable. Plus, the damage is nowhere near worth all the commitment. Most of the time, you'd be activating this move accidentally while trying to spam the mini-shells, much to your dismay as you're savagely dismantled by a pack of rabies-infested trolls. Next up is Windmaster. The first upgrade on the Windmaster path lets you control the direction of Warnado's tornadoes by holding down the secondary button. This upgrade is somewhat useful, but doesn't really bring much to the table right now, other than being able to cheese enemies by standing on a ledge or behind a wall, or guaranteeing that a tornado extension doesn't miss. The second upgrade increases the damage of the tornadoes drastically, going from a somewhat usable 25 to a big chunky gobsmacking 40. For how spammable the tornadoes are, and considering they can stun large groups, 40 damage is a lot. Not to mention the upgrade also noticeably increases the size of the tornadoes, making it much easier to hit enemies by slinging them out in quick succession. The third and final upgrade gives the tornadoes sentience, turning them into wind elementals under Warnado's command that track down enemies and attack them on their own. Wait, if the tornadoes are sentient and completely under his command, wouldn't that come with some strange implications?
And I have full power over them. Go make me a grinder lunch. Or sometimes they get uppity and you've got to keep them in their place. I'm putting you out to work the field!
Anyways, this upgrade is great. It gives Warnado even more range to cheese enemies with, as well as allows the tornadoes to capture multiple enemies much more easily. This move perfectly complements his first two upgrades, and ends the upgrade path very nicely. Overall, I think both of the paths are interesting and fun to play on, with the first path giving me an actual reason to enter flight mode, and the second path swallowing hordes of enemies whole. But which path is better? Eye of the Storm provides you with much more mobility and range compared to the other path, but falls quite short on damage, still mostly relying on the tornadoes to carry out Warnado's DPS. On the other hand, Windmaster goes all in on improving the tornado attack, making it insanely easy to land, upping the damage tremendously, and even making Warnado an unethical motherfucker that's stuck in the 1800s. Forget I said that. Anyways, it's pretty obvious that the Windmaster path is the objectively better path, no matter how you slice it, which is sort of sad to say considering that I like how interesting his spin path is, with it actually giving the flight move a purpose and all. Warnado's soul gem is thick-shelled, which gives him a much wider looking bright blue shell that makes him look much cooler, as well as giving him an extra 40 armor points, making him the Skylander with the highest armor in all of SSA and Giants. Warnado has a base of 30 armor, and the soul gem gives him another 40 armor. The highest armor hat in Giants or SSA is the Santa hat or Rain hat, which gives an extra 20 armor. Completing every single heroic challenge that grants armor will add an extra 45 armor points. Doing some calculations, this amounts to a grand total of 135 armor, or a 45% chance to avoid damage, potentially becoming around 50% when using his flight move. Normally, I'd say an armor upgrade is a weak soul gem, but due to Warnado's already above average armor, I'm gonna make an exception and say that this soul gem is great. Warnado is a very mobile character due to the nature of his primary attack. You're always going to be on the move while sending out tornadoes to capture foes and occasionally follow up with a spin attack to add on a bit of extra damage to the enemy stuck in the tornadoes. It's sort of like a combo. However, it isn't all fun and games, because he does have a fair few weaknesses. Because of the tornado's nature of not dealing damage often, preferring to deal one larger hit over several smaller hits, it causes him to have a hard time dealing with armored enemies, specifically axe-spinning Cyclopes. With their constant invulnerability, it is possible to deal with armor, but it either takes incredibly long or is very risky. I think Warnado is a much better Skylander than many people have cut him out to be. As I've pointed out, he isn't perfect, but with his decently high burst damage and ability to stunlock enemies, I don't understand why anybody would put him anywhere below at least mid-B tier. So, that begs the question, Warnado UNM when?